It is Sunday, the 25th of June, 2017. I'm in front of the Unitarian Church of Montreal. And I'm engaged in my alternative spiritual practice of protesting against Unitarian Universalist injustices, abuses, and hypocrisy, which include cover-up and denial of clergy abuse of all kinds. And it looks like my camera shut off before it was supposed to and may not have recorded a little chat I just had with John Inder, which is unfortunate if that happened. John Inder, former president of the Unitarian Church of Montreal, showed up on a bike, and I decided to, make a statement or two regarding the fact that John Inder, in recent years, in the last year or two, has set himself up as a consultant regarding sexual harassment in the workplace. So he set himself up as this person who advises businesses and institutions and so on about how to deal with sexual harassment in the workplace. And yet, John Inder, as a leading member of the Unitarian Church of Montreal, has directly involved himself in efforts by the Unitarian Church of Montreal to suppress my protest against clergy sexual abuse that occurs within the Unitarian Universalist religious community. And that certainly includes sexual harassment and even worse forms of clergy misconduct, clergy sexual abuse. Sexual harassment is sort of at the lower end of the scale. And so, it's just a tad hypocritical, at minimum, for John Inder to, set himself up as this consultant on how to handle sexual harassment in the workplace when he is involved in helping his religious community hide not just sexual harassment, but even
Talking to yourself?
I'm talking to my camera, sir.
Talking to yourself?
No, I'm talking to my camera. I'm talking to my camera, and a whole lot of people can then hear what I'm saying on YouTube. So here's this little idiot who came out of the Unitarian Church of Montreal saying, talking to yourself, knowing perfectly well, I think, that I'm actually just narrating to the camera. But he's trying to insinuate, that I'm mentally ill. I'm just babbling away to myself, when in fact that is absolutely not the case. And he may also be trying to insinuate that the protest is what's the word I'm looking for? Well, useless would be one word, but that's not the word I was looking for. Futile, that's the word I was looking for, futile. I think he's I think, at least in part, suggesting that I'm, talking to myself in the way that a person suffering from psychosis. What?
You have more and more.
More and more what? Picket signs?
Yes.
No, I actually have had a few stolen by you people.
Oh.
Not you personally. Oh, yes. But no, I've actually had several picket signs stolen. In fact, if we look at the course of my whole protest, I've had probably about a dozen or so stolen over the years. So this woman is saying I have more and more picket signs. Well, actually, no. I have less and less picket signs because Montreal Unitarians and even non-Montreal Unitarians have stolen my picket signs. And even, I think even on one or two occasions, some non-Unitarian members of the public stole my picket signs. But yeah, I can think of, just off the top of my head, just off the top of my head, 5 cases of theft of my picket signs during my protest over the years. We can go back to the spring of 2001 when Kenneth Howard QC, that is QC for Queen's Counsel Lawyer, stole 2 of my picket signs. He snatched them out of my hand and went into the church, and I never saw those picket signs again. Although I did manage to get Kenneth Howard QC forced to cop a plea for stealing my picket signs and technically assaulting me in the process. So he didn't entirely get away with it. He did face some consequences for his theft and indeed assault. So that's 2 picket signs. And then I do remember another occasion where, you know, somebody passing by grabbed one and ran off. And there was another occasion where a member of the public said that if I gave them 1 or 2 of my picket signs, that they would actually display them around town, kind of thing. Well, I never saw them again, so I think it was more like a ploy to just deplete my picket signs. But I can't blame Unitarians for that. But I can certainly blame Kenneth Howard QC, who was a Unitarian. And then there was a case where an Ottawa Unitarian stole quite a number of my picket signs and shoved them into the trunk of her car and drove off. She took, I'd say, at least 4 or 5 of my picket signs. Basically, almost cleaned me out of picket signs at the time. So that's another theft of picket signs by a Unitarian. Then not so long ago, while I was protesting, a woman entering the Unitarian Church of Montreal stole 1 of my picket signs. So if you add that all up, and there were a few other cases that I can think of, just trying to get down to the specifics. There was also an occasion where some overzealous SPVM cops stole my picket signs. And I say steal because they confiscated them and they really had no legal grounds to do so. As far as I'm concerned, it was basically a theft as far as I'm concerned. They took quite a lot of my picket signs, if not all of them, and destroyed them. And this, as far as I'm concerned, was an abuse of power on the part of these SPVM officers and the SPVM, you know, as an institution, really. I actually did try to bring them before the Police Ethics Commission, but due to a misunderstanding about the time delay, it didn't happen. I basically left it too late to file a complaint based on false information I was giving about how much of a period of time there was between the actual incident and when I could file a complaint. So again, that's not Montreal Unitarians that stole my picket signs, but it is SPVM police officers who stole my picket signs.
And they're abused you?
As a matter of fact, verbal and psychological abuse, yes, but not sexual abuse.
Welcome to the world.
Yeah, well, I like to protest against these things. Maybe you should too.
You find something better to do with your life?
I'm talking about pedophilia and rape, amongst other things.
Yeah, and I don't think this is the place to do actually anything about it because everybody thinks you're nuts.
Yeah, well, they're nuts if they think I'm nuts. They're the ones who are in deep psychological denial and incredible willful ignorance. I am actually, if you bother to check the facts, you will see that everything I'm saying is very truthful and supported by evidence. And you are wallowing in willful ignorance and psychological denial, and apparently you don't give a shit about Unitarian Universalists raping children. Good for you. So this woman's, telling me to, stop protesting, essentially, she's saying everyone in there thinks I'm nuts. She's saying everyone in the Unitarian Church of Montreal thinks I'm nuts. And she's probably telling the truth, more or less. I'm not sure if everyone in the Unitarian Church of Montreal thinks I'm nuts, but everyone, or a good chunk of the people in the Unitarian Church of Montreal, certainly try to pretend that I'm nuts and that this protest has zero validity, that it's just some nutcase outside their church. But in fact, no, I'd say people who are better described as nuts are Unitarian Universalists who misuse Canada's blasphemy law and legal bullying intended to cover up and deny pedophilia and rape. Now that's nuts in my books, especially when one considers that the Unitarian Universalist religious community had a centuries-old tradition of opposing blasphemy laws right up until Friday, June 1st of 2012, when the Unitarian Universalist Association's Canadian attorney, Maitre Marc-Andre Coulombe, had me served with a cease and desist demand letter that, amongst other things, falsely accused me of violating Canada's blasphemy law for allegedly making unfounded and vicious allegations to the effect that ministers of the Unitarian Universalist Association engage in such despicable crimes as pedophilia and rape. That is nuts. That is nuts to, first of all, just try to misuse Canada's blasphemy law for any reason whatsoever. But it's especially nuts to misuse Canada's blasphemy law in legal bullying intended to conceal such despicable crimes as pedophilia and rape committed by Reverend Mac Wallace Mitchell and Richard Buell and Stephen Craig Bullite and various other Unitarian Universalists, whether they're ministers or Sunday school teachers or ordinary lay leaders, such as Richard Buell was, to the best of my knowledge. No, that's nuts. That is truly crazy. I like to use the term batshit crazy to describe that attempted misuse of Canada's blasphemy law, but it's not the only batshit crazy thing that leading Unitarian Universalists do. I can think of a few other things, such as brazenly lying about child sex abuse committed by Unitarian Universalist ministers in what's supposed to be an apology to victims of clergy sexual misconduct. We're going to come back to the slogan that's at the other end of the sidewalk here to discuss that again. But just under 3 years ago now, UUA moderator Jim Key delivered his first moderator's report to a General Assembly of the Unitarian Universalist Association. I do believe it was the 28th of June, but the date doesn't matter if I'm off by a day or two. What really matters is that UUA moderator Jim Key, in what was supposed to be an apology to victims of clergy sexual misconduct, specifically a UUA board apology to victims of clergy sexual misconduct, that I do believe he very inappropriately sandwiched into the middle of his moderator's report. He brazenly lied about sexual abuse of children committed by Unitarian Universalist ministers. He said the following words: "There were no incidents of abuse of children or elders in my investigations." So Jim Key essentially said, that he personally investigated Unitarian Universalist clergy sexual misconduct, and that in his own personal investigations of Unitarian Universalist clergy sexual misconduct, he found no evidence of Unitarian Universalist ministers being guilty of abusing either children or elders. Well, this is an outright lie. It's a brazen, bald-faced lie on the part of UUA moderator Jim Key, because I personally told Jim Key about the fact that Reverend Mac Wallace Mitchell was charged, tried, and convicted of raping teenage Tibetan refugees. I also told Jim Key about some other cases where Unitarian Universalist ministers were charged, tried, and convicted of the sexual abuse of very young children, preteen children. We're talking pedophilia here. So I personally told this to Jim Key months before his so-called apology. So he, if nothing else, he had my information that I gave him, which he could have verified. And I do find it hard to believe that nobody else told Jim Key about specifically the sexual abuse of children by Unitarian Universalist ministers. That being said, it's not impossible that, you know, Unitarian Universalists who are in the know about such things, for whatever reason, did not tell Jim Key about that. But I find that very hard to believe, but it's not impossible, because Unitarian Universalists are so in denial, and they're also afraid. They're literally afraid of the consequences of speaking out about such things. Because, you know, when people do speak out against clergy sexual misconduct in general, and clergy sexual abuse of children in particular, you know, they are usually badly treated by their co-religionists. The women who reported to the police, you know, what they had been told about him raping teenage Tibetan refugees by one of the victims, were badly treated by their congregation, which I believe was the, I think it was the Westboro, Massachusetts congregation. It could have been the Northborough one. Mac Wallace Mitchell actually served two congregations. He served the Westboro and Northborough congregations in Massachusetts. And right now, I do know the information, but right now I'm just, you know, I'm 90% sure it's the Westboro one, where the members, a few of them, 5 or so women, reported the crimes to the police, and were subsequently ostracized and shunned, and eventually, I think at least some of them resigned